Constitution.
All right, that's right.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm like, I know that author. I'll read it, maybe. I don't know if I read books. I mean, I would, but I don't have the time. I have a baby.
Oh, yeah, I don't have time to write it, but I choose to do it anyway. Yeah.
I would read, but I'd rather sleep when I can for now. Maybe in a few years I'll have time to read.
Yeah, I'll just be on a couple.
Okay.
I'm going to get food.
Alright.
Yeah.
Do I want to take Steve Roy?
Do what, baby?
Do I want to take Steve by that song?
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you want to paint for me. You can later on. Okay.
But I don't know if you like it.
I'm trying to learn that. I would like your song. Ryan, I guess we'll just pull up chairs around because I have no idea how many people. That's one of the reasons I'm.
We used to not have tables, so.
Yeah.
Hurricanes. Here, sit down just a minute.
Just one of the reasons I'm recording is to see if we can get a little more viewership. And that Madison is bunch of stuff in there.
Is that for me? From New York? That's nice. Why did you get
Well, some of it Elaine got, and some of it I got.
You didn't have to do that.
I know what, most of it's Elaine, and some of this Patty's. And then I just stuck Jolene's bag in there. This is, like I said, for y'all's anniversary.
Oh.
And, there's probably tags on everything, but we just picked it up. Cool, sorry. I got that from Jolene from the grocery store. I just found the deals on some long sleeve shirts that I got. I hope I even got them all in there.
Cool, because I definitely don't have. I need black shirts for work, and I don't have long sleeve black shirts.
Oh, you didn't? I would have wished I didn't know. I would have gotten one.
Thank you.
What about you?
Yeah,
Oh.
that's.
And then that's Patty's mug.
Should I give it to her now?
I mean, it's up to you. But here, it looks like we'll have a rain pick up the one too, so that's good.
Cool.
And then you had to have all white?
Well, just black shirt. They said jeans are fine. What is that? Is that a concert? Cool. All right. Cool.
And there's the stuff that you left at the house, and then there's a couple things that I have that I stick in there. That's cute. It's one. Huh? Stop. Yeah. Okay. Huh? Does it? What does it smell like?
It's just the plastic.
Oh yeah, it just smells.
Yeah.
Smells factory-ish.
Yeah.
I know, Ryan, I have not forgotten. I was going to pray for you. Because I said something to BJ earlier about, because as usual, get surrounded by people right after church, but he asked about you, and I said that your things are going on with your job. So, do you know anything else about it?
Just that, I got 11 days of 9 days of CPO, and then Thanksgiving and an extra day. And then maybe they find something before then, and I'm still on, but go out a little longer. But I'm thinking I'm starting not to like this situation where they just drop you just out of warning.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just this weird thing going on where it's like everybody says they want to bring me on. All the clients say they want me, but they're all they just sit there and wait constantly. And it's a strange thing. It's funny because there's other people in my situation who came on the bench and then went off the bench on their situation assignment, and of course I'm still there, sitting there waiting. It's just really odd.
What do you do?
I'm a programmer, computer stuff. Yeah, so it's like, I don't know.
This is awkward. Hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. We're trying. I told BJ I wanted to try because to see. BJ, don't include this. I know that he's already recording to shit or get off the pot as far as this class goes because
He's already recording?
yeah, he'll cut it out because he just wants to get something to eat. But I need to either get more people to come or not do it because I spent a lot of time getting these lessons ready. You know what I'm saying?
So you're not going to do it?
Well, I need to get either more people to, like, more interest, more people, more attendance coming, or because I spend hours getting this ready, so, I need to either more people come or just do it. So that we're gonna put it on YouTube for, like, record it and put it on YouTube and see if that because people tell me kind of off to the side, even people from other churches say they have interest in coming, but they just never come. So I don't know what the deal is, but anyway.
Maybe you should tell the youth group that people in the youth group need to be under 18 and everyone needs to come to this class, the college class. Like Maddie and Catherine need to be up here. I've been trying, and they can't, they don't feel like they are allowed to leave because they don't, not allowed to, but they feel bad for leaving because of mine.
Yeah, I understand.
That's the only reason why. Yeah, I think they need to come up here. And I've been trying to convince them.
We'll see how it works out. I'm not going to be butthurt about it either way. I just need to figure something out as far as, like, whatever. I just need to figure something out about it. It's a whole lot of, because I work a lot. I work a lot of hours, and then I go home and sit up at night getting this ready. So I'm, it's a lot of personal sacrifice if it's not going to be.
You can put tags and stuff on the YouTube video so that anything they look up, your videos will pop up.
That's a good idea.
They look up alien.
Yeah.
Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And then your face will get through
Mm-hmm.
But you'll tag the videos, like tag Bible, tag this, tag prophecy, tag Isaiah, tag this, like hashtag.
Yeah.
But you've always been able to tag on those.
Okay, that's a good idea. Well, we'll see. I'll at least get.
And if that gets popular, they have to pay you for however many likes. Or however many views. If you get over that video that they were talking about, Mexico was talking about that video with the rock skipping on the ice. They paid them like $10,000 for that video.
Yeah.
right.
All right, so we'll go ahead and let me get my phone so I can time. God, I'm so cold. I want to just hibernate in my phone. I know it really is. Here, so I can. All right. Okie dokie. All right. But y'all can, I still want it to be like a class for this recorded, basically. Okay, so we're in Isaiah, and we'll be doing chapters 10 through 11 tonight. And
I mean, we didn't be out loud with like 2 people.
yeah, I'm sure that's a mistake. That's okay. All right. So Isaiah chapters 10 through 11. And we will just start at the beginning, and there's some really interesting stuff about a couple of things. And one of the things I love about these Old Testament prophecies is the fact that we're literally in our lifetime seeing them come to pass. And I think that you'll see tonight it will be just another affirmation of the fact that we are absolutely living in the day of the coming of Christ for the second time. And so what day it is, we still don't know. But and another thing is that God is definitely a very precise, exact God, and that He has a schedule. He has a time clock. And we can see it in hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20, and so we can see in hindsight things that have played out exactly according to a certain times fulfilled. So we'll see some of that later on in chapter 11. But let's start with some things about this character called the Assyrian. Some of this might be review, and some of it may be new. Verse 1, woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees. Does that sound like our day so far? Yeah. To deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless. What will you do on the day of reckoning when disaster comes from afar? To whom will you run for help? Where will you leave your riches? Nothing will remain but to cringe among the captives or fall among the slain. Yet for all this, his anger is not turned away and his hand is still upraised. God's judgment on Assyria, verse 5. Woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath. Okay, so this says, woe to the Assyrian. There are approximately 33 titles for the Antichrist that are listed in the Old Testament, and one of those is the Assyrian, is that he's called the Assyrian. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he is of Assyrian descent. But it could mean that, but not necessarily. It's more of an idiom, is that he's an Assyrian. And interestingly, the Pharaoh during the time of the Exodus was actually an Assyrian, which when you think of why he might have been a little more, it would have lent to feelings of insecurity as a ruler, because he wasn't of Egyptian descent, so that when the Hebrews began to be this mighty nation, and he himself is not of Egyptian descent, it led to him having a little bit of insecurity as a ruler, and which is why he became so oppressive and enslaved them and tried to make sure that they would not rebel against him and that kind of thing. But that Pharaoh is a title. It wasn't. There were different pharaohs of different nationalities that came on the scene in different generations, but. And the Assyrian Empire lasted for over 700 years. So this is a long, and there's a people group around today that can claim Assyrians as their lineage, as their heritage. As a matter of fact, my understanding is that there's some community in California that are Assyrians, and that talk a lot about going back to their homeland and reestablishing the Assyrian nation. which that's the one empire of the world empires. There was one that was the Assyrian Empire. That's the one that seemingly just kind of fell off the face of the earth. It just completely disseminated. I mean, some other ones, the Babylonian Empire, Iraq and Iran, which used to be Persia, so the Persian Empire. I mean, it's changed hands and changed names and been divided up into countries, but still there. The Roman Empire, still, you still see some semblance of vestige of that time period around, etc. You don't see anything about the Assyrian Empire just kind of disappeared off the face of history. So it's interesting that it's suddenly now coming back around. Well, okay. The Assyrian. This picture here is of Nimrod, who is, I was assuming that. I just kind of grabbed an image off Google. There's been some other sculptures of Nimrod that this looks like, so I have to go double check my source, but I think this is an Assyrian king anyway. But Nimrod is basically the original Antichrist type, because there's types of Antichrist all the way out through the Bible, through history, and there's types of Christ. Remember that in the Hebrew mindset, prophecy is pattern. And so that's why the Jewish people are always looking for patterns. They're looking into, the patterns of the stars and the cycles of the moon and the sun and that kind of thing. Patterns. In the Greek mindset, which is what we have adopted for today, prophecy is more, this is going to happen, and then here's the fulfillment of it. And we love, even in our Bibles, to make lists of, here's this prophecy, and in this verse it's fulfilled. Here's this prophecy, and then it's fulfilled. And that is the thing. It's just the way we think, now in Western culture, the way we kind of think. In the Hebrew mindset, prophecy is pattern. They look for patterns that replay over and over. That's why these Jewish festivals are dress rehearsals of things to come. And that's why we continue, the more I learn about the Jewish festivals, the more I understand that it's so important for us to know about them, because there are some that are yet to be fulfilled. There's some that we are watching for right now. And if we are not aware, Mark Biltz, who's the one who discovered the blood moon tetrad phenomena, the fact that it's happening on the Jewish feast days, he describes it as dress rehearsal. Well, if you're invited to the wedding, if we're looking forward to the wedding, why wouldn't we want to be at the dress rehearsal? It's like you want to at least kind of be in the, in the pattern, be looking for it, be part of the process as it's playing out. It's part of the blessing. Okay. I'm going to talk about him more in a minute as far as Nimrod himself, or the Assyrian. Well, let me go ahead and do that. Nimrod his name actually means we shall rebel. And it says in Genesis, when he comes on the scene, that he began to be a Gibbor, Gibbor, that he began to be a mighty man in the earth, and he began, or so some translations say a mighty hunter. A Gibbor can be a Nephilim, it can be an actual offspring of a fallen angel and human woman, but it's not always that. Now, the B'nai Hai Elohim are always fallen angels. That's in Genesis chapter 6. But a Gibbor is sometimes, sometimes used to describe Nephilim, but not always, because David's mighty men were also described. This word was used also to describe David's mighty men. But interestingly, in the account in Genesis, it says that he began to be a mighty man, or a Gibbor. And the connotation of the language that he wasn't this, and then all of a sudden he began to become this, And then, and as soon as he did, there's some other clues that we can get from the context. As soon as he did, the first thing he did was he set out to build the Tower of Babel. And he set out to Nineveh to build the Tower of Babel. So it seems like, and in the building of the Tower of Babel, most people still have the Sunday school version in their mind of making a staircase, high enough to reach heaven, and gee, that's silly. They think you can actually make a ladder that actually reaches into heaven, and those silly people, they didn't know what they're doing. Not so, because God came down to scatter the people, else they would have succeeded. Now, if it hadn't been possible for them to succeed at what they were doing, God would not have gone so far as to come down and stop them and scatter them. What Nimrod basically set out to do was to create a stargate to reach into the third heaven, or to reach into another dimension. And the more I learn about the Bible, and the more I learn about ancient architecture and ancient history and modern science, the more I am convinced more than ever that what is true, what is said in Ecclesiastes, that there is nothing new under the sun. Everything that has been shall be again. Everything that is has been before. And I believe with everything in me that is more and more true. As these things unfold, we see more and more truth in that, is that there really truly is. I was looking the other day, I don't know how many of you guys saw it, that I put on Facebook of Brian Forrester, which is does things with L.M. Marzulli. They have gone together on these expeditions to Peru and other places in investigating the elongated skulls and ancient architecture of the Nephilim and that kind of thing. Brian Forrester fairly recently was part of. He put out this video talking about the underground underneath the Pyramid of Giza, and these giant boxes, these giant granite boxes. They were, I believe, rose granite, if I'm not mistaken, and they were quarried from a single piece of stone. He was basically making a case that these boxes were originally used for some kind of ancient civilization that was even more advanced than our civilization today. Some kind of science, some kind of technology that exceeded what we have today. And we are just now sort of catching up to this old technology, just to the point where we're starting to take a second look at all this architecture and think there's more to this. They've always said this, or they've always thought this was just this, because the tradition says what the Egyptologists basically say is that these huge boxes that are underground under the pyramid were sarcophaguses for the ox, the Apis bull, and so they had around 30 of these boxes under there. However, there were no remains of bulls ever discovered. So even these boxes were all completely empty. Now, in the box and the lid were carved from a single piece of granite, and they have they have other boxes that were abandoned. There was one in particular that was abandoned by whoever carved it to begin with, because it got a crack in the lid. So instead of just making another lid for said box, they abandoned the entire thing altogether. It was basically giving you an idea that for some reason these boxes had to be of one continuous piece of rock in order to be possibly a conductor of electricity, or some kind of power source, or some kind of energy source that they're just now rediscovering, and just now trying to piece out and find out what they were made for. But there was for them to continue to believe that there were burial places for the sacred ox is just kind of silly, because there's never any ox there. And also in the tunnels and the archways where you go through the underground, and there's like a series of tunnels and rooms off where these boxes are. And you go in and you find these huge boxes that weigh, if I remember correctly, I think 70 tons. I mean, a lot. They're big, heavy, huge boxes. And part of the mystery is that the box does not fit. It would not fit through the entryway. I mean, these are underground, underneath the Great Pyramid. And so how in the world did they get there? They won't even fit through the doorway. So there's all these mysteries, and they know where they're quarried from. They were quarried from, way out yonder. I don't remember how far away it is, but they're somehow or another brought in there. So it's all a mystery still, and they're still trying to unravel it. But the point is that we're just now beginning to catch up with some kind of ancient technology and knowledge of science that has been completely lost in the Noah's flood. So Nimrod began to be a Gibborim, and he set out, and he presumably suddenly had some kind of enlightened vision spiritually, and knew there was a Stargate in this particular place. He didn't try to build this thing in his backyard or where he was. He set out to a particular place in Nineveh, and right there began to build this Tower of Babel that was supposedly supposed to reach into the third heavens, and according to Scripture would have probably succeeded, because God said it's like they're going to be able to do anything they put their minds to unless I come down and stop them and scatter them. So God came down and stopped them and scattered them because he said it was not yet time. So now we've come full circle. And now we are once again beginning to build stargates, portals, bridges into the next dimension, opening up those spiritual realms. And this time God is allowing it to happen. So the time, as far as my personal observation, it seems like the time is at hand. The time has come where he's allowing the fulfillment of this entire plan to play out. But Nimrod, by the way, I think I printed this off just in order to have these different names. He was known in history by many different names, upwards of 70. There's 70 names that you can pinpoint and go back to the character in Genesis who we call Nimrod. Reason being is that when God scattered them at the Tower of Babel, they were scattered according to the number of the angels of God. You can go to the book of Joshua. As a matter of fact, I'm going to find that for you real quick. The book of Joshua has this account, and it confirms. That's not all I wanted to say. That trails a little bit too much. Well, Deuteronomy 32 says, when the Most High assigned lands to the nations, when he divided up the human race, he established the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of his heavenly court. So the number of his heavenly court, in all ancient texts, there was just an understood common knowledge that there were 70 original nations at this point, 70 nations, which would have meant 70 languages. So Nimrod ended up having 70 names to begin. It's like if we suddenly spoke French, I would, whatever the French name for Madison would be, we would suddenly be calling your name something different. So, but some of them are Gilgamesh, from the Epic of Gilgamesh, Baal, Melkart, Adonis, Dionysus, Bacchus, Orion. Good Lord, our bank now, Orion.
Not my bank.
Mithra, Apollo, Ra, Tammuz, and Osiris. Okay, and there's others, but that is some, and so I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on that, as far as who he is. So now we have basically the return of this character of the Assyrian who's basically coming back onto the scene. Whether from actual Assyrian descent or if it's just an idiom, I don't know. But it sure lends to the possibility that whoever the Antichrist is going to be begins to be a Geborim, sort of like Nimrod began to be a Geborim. That suddenly, some point in time, there's literally a change in the DNA, a change in the genetic code that causes you to be superhuman. Something more, I mean, and that is not science fiction at this point. That's literally science that is touted as being good now. I mean, that's almost commonplace science that we are hearing about in the news on CNN and otherwise all the time. So, okay. But the rod, he says, woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger. So basically, God is, in this first chapter, what he's saying, in essence, is that he's using the nation of Assyria to accomplish his purpose. So he's allowing this nation who thinks that they're acting on their own accord, who's coming against Israel. This nation is coming against Israel to attack them and overtake them and that kind of thing. So and they think they're doing it on their own, not realizing that they're, it's only through, guided what God is allowing to happen. So it's that he, speaks of them as the rod of his anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath. But then he turns around and does an interesting thing. When his purpose is accomplished, he'll turn around and punish Assyria for coming against his people. But it's sort of like getting killing two birds with one stone in a way. It's like he's accomplishing what he wants to accomplish, but then he's punishing these wicked people at the same time. Okay, verse 6, I sent him against a godless nation. I dispatched him against a people who anger me, to seize loot and snatch plunder, and to trample them down like mud in the streets. To seize loot and snatch plunder and trample them down. This is reminiscent of the name of his first son. So remember that, of Isaiah's first son. Isaiah's first son's name meant to hurry and seize the loot, basically, and plunder. And the name of the second son means that a remnant shall return. So there's the 1 and the 2, which is very cool. But this is not what he intends. This is not what he has in mind. His purpose is to destroy, to put an end to many nations. Speaking of the Assyrian thinks he's doing something else. Are not my commanders all kings, he says. Has not Calno fared like Carchemish? Has not Harnoth like Arpad, and Samaria like Damascus? What these cities, basically what he's setting forth is that these new cities are like the victories of old. These new cities are just like old victories, basically. So there's an older and a newer, and an older and a newer. So it's a pattern there that they would have understood. This is so far history for us, that we, have to kind of do some study. Calno was a city of Nimrod. Carchemish was, the Battle of Carchemish was what established Babylon as the capital of the world, the empire. He was the capital of the Hittites, where Nebuchadnezzar was, basically, and etc. Okay. As my hand sees the kingdom of idols, kingdoms whose images excelled those of Jerusalem and Samaria, shall I not deal with Jerusalem and her images as I dealt with Samaria and her idols? When the Lord has finished all his work against Mount Zion and Jerusalem, he will say, I will punish the king of Assyria for the willful pride of his heart and the haughty look in his eyes. Okay, so what he is saying, Jerusalem and Samaria are basically the capitals of the lower kingdom, of the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom, because Israel was divided into two of the northern and southern kingdoms after Solomon died. So after Solomon died, Israel was divided into the north and the south. Samaria was the capital of the north. Judah and Jerusalem's capital of the south. So that's what, and there was they actually had civil wars for a long time between the two, the northern and southern. So that's basically where you're getting. I'm just filling you in on the background. But by the strength of my hand I have done this, and by my wisdom, because I have understanding, I removed the boundaries of nations. I plundered their treasures. Like a mighty one, I subdued their king. As one reaches into a nest, so my hand reached for the wealth of the nations. As people gather abandoned eggs, so I gathered all the countries. Not one flapped a wing or opened its mouth to chirp. Does the axe raise itself above the person who swings it, or the saw boast against the one who uses it? As if a rod were to wield the person who lifts it up, or a club brandish the one who is not wood. Therefore the Lord Almighty, will send a wasting disease upon his sturdy warriors. Under his pomp a fire will be kindled like a blazing fire. The light of Israel will become a fire, the Holy One a flame. In a single day it will burn and consume his thorns and his briars. Now the light of Israel is an idiom, and I see here that it's capitalized. There's a reason for that. The light of it. Now this is Old Testament, right? So, but the light of Israel is the light of the world is named in the New Testament as Jesus Christ. The light of Israel, also Jesus Christ, will become a fire, the Holy One a flame. In a single day it will burn and consume his thorns and his briars. And then we'll take on new meaning here when we get to chapter 11. The splendor of his forest and fertile fields will completely destroy, as when a sick person wastes away, and the remaining trees of his forest will be so few that a child could write them down. In that day, a remnant of Israel, the survivors of Jacob, will no longer rely on him who struck them down, but who will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return. A remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. And you guys are about to see how that is absolutely 100% being fulfilled in our day right now. Because there was two fulfillments of this. But remember the week before last, when a lot of times when things are repeated twice, Babylon has fallen, that kind of thing, it means that there's two different unraveling pieces of that statement. And so we'll see two different times that a remnant will return. Once after the Babylonian captivity, and then again in our day. And I'll break that down in just a minute. Though your people be like the sand of the sea, Israel, only a remnant will return. Destruction has been decreed, overwhelming and righteous. And by the way, there's about 50,000 that returned to Israel after the captivity in Babylon. And 50,000 people is not that much. So it really truly was a tiny remnant compared to the kingdom that it was. So it really truly is just a little remnant, a little seed. The people who live in Zion, do not be afraid of the Assyrians, who beat you with rod and lift up a club against you as Egypt did. Very soon my anger against you will end, and my wrath will be directed to their destruction. The Lord Almighty will lash them with a whip, as when he struck down Midian at the rock of Oreb. He will raise a staff over the waters as he did in Egypt. In that day their burden will be lifted from your shoulders, their yoke from your neck. The yoke will be broken because you have grown so fat. They enter Aiath. They pass through Migron. Now this right here, the next few verses, is written like a sports announcer calling a play-by-play. And this is yet things that are yet future to be fulfilled, but he's writing it in present tense, as if it's happening right before his eyes, which is interesting because a lot of times the prophets were actually seeing things, right? So he's seeing it happen. And he's actually what he's doing is all these cities are getting closer and closer and closer to Jerusalem. And so they enter Aiath, which is about 30 miles away, 30 miles north. They pass through Migron, and that gets to be about 7 miles north. They store supplies at Michmash. Then they got 6 miles away. They go over the pass and say, we'll camp overnight at Geba. Ramah trembles. Gibeah of Saul flees. That's all about 4 miles away. Cry out, daughter Gailim. Listen, Laish. Poor Anathoth. And then it's literally a countdown. 3, 2, 1. All these cities are getting closer and closer and closer. Madmenah is in flight. To the people of Gibeon take over. This day they will halt at Nob. They will shake their fists at the mount of daughter of Zion at the hill of Jerusalem. Nob is inside of Jerusalem. So he does this play-by-play, closer, 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 until finally they're inside Jerusalem. So this is Isaiah prophesying to them that, this is going to end up right in their city. Interesting. We kind of almost are seeing that now. Let me say that out loud. We almost kind of see a little bit of something like that happening now. Because we hear about things in the news, and I think people, 2 things. One, we get glazed over and desensitized because we have such an onslaught of bad news. We turn on the news, and there's more than the human mind or human spirit can really digest, and it's definitely more than we can affect. It's more that we feel like we can't do anything about it. So the onslaught of beheadings and burning and crucifixion, literally, and things that are happening overseas seems so far away. But, one of the things, we just went on this trip and back to New York, and I kept thinking to myself, the prophecy of during the day of the Lord, how people will be going, everyone was going to and fro. There's a lot of travel. Everybody's running around all over the globe. And I guess just being at an airport and seeing all this, back and forth, and everybody's here and there and here and there. And it's not generally my lifestyle to go hop on a plane, but for a lot of people it is. For a lot of people, they do this for business all the time and have for years. And so there's people all the time that just travel. And that brings everything into a very much smaller community anyway. And so then the things that are overseas really are just a few hours from us, literally. So you can kind of almost see the march of things, particularly towards Israel, but it'll end up here at some point in time. See, the Lord Almighty will lop off the boughs with great power. The lofty trees will be felled, the tall ones will be brought low. He will cut down thick forest thickets with an axe. Lebanon will fall before the mighty one. Okay, chapter 11. He switches for a second, which is, really cool about these Old Testament prophets, but particularly in Isaiah, he'll switch and he'll start talking about the end times. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. Okay, Jesse was the father of David, King David. And the root of Jesse is one of the idioms for Jesus Christ. We see that in Matthew. But you know what's interesting? A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The branch in Jeremiah denotes a king, because there's different words. Things don't translate into English the way they do in these ancient languages. But branch means a king in Jeremiah. The branch in Zechariah means man. And the branch here in Isaiah is Netzer, which means Nazarene. And so in Matthew 2, it actually says that it might be fulfilled, like he went to Nazareth so that it might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. And he's quoting from Isaiah. He'll be called a Nazarene. And then, of course, then you have in Revelation 5, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. And there's other places, but there's some, you can follow that thread if you want to, but the root of David. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. Now, in Revelation chapter 1, we see the Spirit of God, or the sevenfold Spirit of God. And here you have 7 spirits that are listed right here. The Spirit of the Lord, the Spirit of wisdom, of understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and fear of the Lord. So you have 7 things that are listed, which is interesting. 7 is a number of completion of, a lot of times it's associated with divinity, but it's more of a holy kind of completion. But you have, in the Temple of Solomon, outside of the temple, you had 2 pillars, which of course was adopted and perverted by cults like Freemasonry later on. But in the temple, you can do a whole study on the architecture, the structure of the temple itself, because the temple, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, is what, the word says that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So you can actually do a study of the temple of Solomon and make some really interesting discoveries about that. But there's 2 pillars that were named Jachin and Boaz. And in Freemasonry, they are still named Jachin and Boaz. But Jachin and Boaz means counsel and might. Jachin means counsel, Boaz means might. And so you have here two of these spirits are named the spirit of counsel and of might. So it's interesting that you have that correlation, counsel and might, out in front. And on either side of the temple, there were actually places of storage that you couldn't access from the inside. You had to be outside to access. But there were places of storage basically for the priest, but it was where they ended up also storing idols that we saw. For those who were here when we went through Ezekiel, God showed Ezekiel when he took him in, when he translated him in the spirit, and he took him in to see the idols and stuff that they were worshiping at night. They were actually literally doing their priestly duties by day and then going off and worshiping other idols by night. But you can do a whole study on that, but just so that you are aware that there is a correlation from these 7 spirits of God, which is basically the Holy Spirit. It's the 7-fold nature of the Holy Spirit. And the temple of Solomon, temple of God. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Now we see that again also in Revelations when he comes and he defeats the Antichrist with the sword that proceeds from his mouth. And there's been a lot of illustrations and drawings of people like drawing Jesus with a literal sword coming out of his mouth. But that's obviously an idiom for the word. His what he speaks. It literally just his words destroy the work of the Antichrist. I know. It's right. I know. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. And in our world, one of the things that if we who long for justice and who long for righteousness, and if you read Habakkuk, the Old Testament book of Habakkuk, it was all about the cry of, where is justice? Why, God, why are you looking away from all the injustice? And you hear that today from people who don't know anything about God. Where is justice? If there is a God, then why does he allow this? If there is a good God, why are these horrible things happening? A lot of times they account, children that are abused and that kind of thing. And that is it's a valid observation, but the answer is wide and deep, and you have to actually have a humble heart and ready to listen to hear the long answer that I would personally give to someone who asks that question. But the fact is that in this world, by the way, that is run by Satan, Satan has been given dominion over this world for a season, which is why it's so messed up. And that's our fault, by the way. But fallen man, it's because of sin that we allowed it into this world. So we are quick to try to point fingers at God, why he would allow such things. But he will actually mete out justice. And for those who are righteous, it will be good. It will be refreshing for us to see righteousness finally prevail and justice finally prevail, because there really is no system of exacting justice in this world. I mean, you have, for instance, we're talking about, if you have a guy who's like tortured and murdered little children, you can't imagine anything that could be done to really make that right. There's no way to make that kind of evil right. There's really not. We have a system of punishment, and then we even have civil courts where we assign monetary value to crimes. It's like when we can, try to give damages according to, it's like $1 million because of your pain and suffering or whatever. But there's no way to really make something right. Kathy's daughter, Caitlin, who is, they still have not received justice for what happened to her at childbirth that's caused her to be in a wheelchair. But even if they got $10 million, she's still in a wheelchair. There's no way to really make that right. But when Jesus comes, he will actually exact justice. He will actually be able to repay her for the years that the moths and the locusts have eaten, and restore all of that back to her. He is the only one who actually can make it right. And he will. Somehow or another, he will do it. She will walk, I would love to see that happen in our lifetime, but for sure it will happen in the next. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like an ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and a young child will put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as waters cover the sea. Now that apparently even extends into creation such as animals, because even they will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord, because even they will live at peace. The curse will be lifted. When Jesus comes and establishes his reign, a lot of fear of talks of prophecy in the end times is fear of the unknown. There's a lot of confusion about it. There's a lot of people, movies like, what was it, 2012, or, all these movies that are like, all these end time apocalyptic scenarios and stuff are, a lot of it is propaganda, and people really don't have knowledge of what it means. Now, bad stuff's gonna happen, yes, but for God's own children, there is absolutely not one thing to fear, nothing, because it only is good for us, and we are called to spend our days to preach the good news to other people, so that more and more people can be brought into the fold, so it can experience the good part of that also. So they can be set free and experience this part right here, the 1,000-year reign. And not all the Old Testament saints won't be resurrected to experience this, by the way. They're not resurrected until the end of the 1,000 years. This is specifically for the time of the church and the remnant of Israel that reestablishes the nation. But we will see it. We will see his kingdom. And these Old Testament, Isaiah himself would be jealous of the day and time that we live in. We complain and moan and groan a lot, but these Old Testament prophets longed to see what we see now and what we're going to see. So we need to always be aware of that. Okie doke. In that day, the root of Jesse, which again is Jesus Christ, will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. In that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of the people of Assyria from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, which is Persia, from Babylonia, which is Iraq, from Hamath, and from the islands of the Mediterranean. Okay. Now, I'm going to pause for a second, and we're going to talk about when he reaches out his hand a second time to gather in the remnant of Israel. Okay? Now, I've said over and over again that the major event of the Old Testament, if you know about the Babylonian captivity, you have a context, you have an anchor for all these things and all these prophecies and all these other things that happen around that. So you have the Babylonian captivity, okay, that lasted for 70 years. Now, there is a separate time period that is also 70 years long that is called the Desolation of Jerusalem. And they're close together, but they're separated. The Babylonian captivity began with there was 3 sieges. Jeremiah was constantly telling the people, and he would tell the kings of that day during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Basically, he was telling the kings, "This God has purposed this. Nebuchadnezzar will come and will take over this land, and the nation of Israel will live in servitude to the king of Babylon for 70 years. This is going to happen." Now, there were false prophets at the time. Now, also think about this. If this also does not sound like today, there were false prophets at that time that were telling the king something else. They'd say, "Why does he prophesy bad things? It's all good. Everything's good. God is on our side. God is for us. We are the people of God. God is going to protect us no matter what. He's not going to let that heathen nation come and overtake us." Really? That's exactly what happened, and that's what Jeremiah said. Jeremiah kept telling them over and over again, if you don't resist Nebuchadnezzar, you can save Jerusalem. You can save your life, you can save Jerusalem if you don't resist him. If you rebel against him, it's going to be worse for you. And but they wouldn't listen to Jeremiah. They kept saying, "Why do you keep prophesying bad things? You're saying a bunch of bad things. We're the people of God. God wouldn't do that to us. He wouldn't do that to us." Well, does that not smack of today? Oh my goodness. There are a lot of people, it's called dominionism, by the way, who believe that we are going to establish, somehow or another through legislation and politics and electing people and social movements, we're going to somehow or another usher in God's kingdom, and we're going to be a part of ushering that in through our own means, through man's, attempt to do so. That's not what's going to happen. Which is one of the main reasons I have, there's a lot of other reasons. One of the reasons I just kind of back out of politics, and I especially don't get involved in the conversations about politics, because God is neither Republican or Democrat. I can guarantee you that. And the more study I do, and the more I learn, not only about occultism, about history, and about God, the more I see a vast chasm between the two. And there really is no, that doesn't mean you can't do your civic duty. I always want to try to not discourage people from trying to do good or trying to stand up for justice. I think that we should take a stand for justice. And I honestly do think that's an individual pursuit. That's between you and God. To whatever that means for you to stand for justice, I think is an honorable cause. However, I have found it more urgent and pressing to bypass that as far as my conversation and just preach the kingdom of God is coming. And the kingdom of God is coming. Now, let me tell you, okay, let me get back on track because this is going to blow your mind. Now, you had, when Nebuchadnezzar took the Israel into captivity, Jeremiah himself said that it was going to be for 70 years. Exactly, and it was to the day. But there were 3 different sieges that happened. There was the first one when the Assyrians took over the northern kingdom, all the way down to when Nebuchadnezzar finally sacked Jerusalem, and that was the 3rd siege. Okay, so there's 3 different sieges. The servitude of the nation begins with the first siege of Jerusalem and lasts exactly 70 years. The desolation of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, begins with the third siege and lasts exactly 70 years. That was approximately 19 years later. It lasted exactly 70 years. So you've got, they overlap a little bit. They're right there together, but they're different. Exactly to the day, 70 years. Okay. Now, there's a prophecy in Ezekiel, if you guys were here, that says that God is going to punish Israel for 430 years. And that was the prophecy when he does the weird thing of lying on his side, on his right side, and prophesies against, God's going to do this. And then he lies on his left side, and it was divided up because on his right side, he's facing the northern kingdom. On his left side, he's facing the southern kingdom. So he's basically prophesying, but it just suffice it to say it comes out to 430 years. Now, 70 years can be accounted for because the nation was in servitude to Babylon for 70 years. But that leaves from 430 years minus 70, you get 360. So that leaves 360 years. Now, different commentators have tried to fit 360 years here and there, approximately here, approximately there, and try to make it fit. But God is never approximate. He's never about, or it's never kinda or sorta. He is exact. Okay?
Never kinda or sorta.
Yes. So you get from 360 years, you always, by the way, have to use, when you're dealing with the Bible, you have to use a 360-day year. I won't get into all of that, but there's around 701 BC, something happened. We have reason to believe there was some kind of cosmic shift, and that goes into the orbit of Mars and Earth. That's a subject for another day. But there was it was about 701 BC that all of the ancient calendars changed. They all used to be 360 days long. And then all of a sudden they all changed to the 365 and a quarter. They had different ways of reckoning that. Different calendars had different ways of reckoning that. We do it with the Gregorian calendar with the leap year, right? Okay. So, but for the purposes of prophecy, you always use the 360-day year. Okay, so you have 360. Now, there is, if you look in Leviticus, you find a prophecy, Leviticus chapter 26, that says, if you don't obey me, I'll multiply your punishment times 7. Okay, so if you get 360 years and you multiply it by 7, you get 2,520 years. Okay, so now 2,520 years comes out to, if you do leap years and all that stuff, right? A 360-day year is actually 2,483 years, 9 months, and 21 days. All right. Now, you ready to have your mind blown? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. From the day of the servitude of the nations, the end of the servitude of the nation. If you take that, the termination of the servitude of the nation of Israel, and you add 2,483 years, 9 months, and 21 days, you come to May 14th, 1948. That was the exact day that Israel was established as a nation. The exact day. Now, God is exact. Okay, God is exact. Oh, it gets better. Okay?
Oh my God.
Now, from the end of the time period of the desolation of Jerusalem, remember there's 2 different time periods, 2 different periods of 70 years. From the end of the desolation of Jerusalem, if you add 2,483 years, 9 months, 21 days, you come to June 7th, 1967, which is when Israel regains Jerusalem as the capital. Once again, God is exact. And I went through all of that in order to point out that when he stretches out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of the people, this is the day, we have seen it happen, that he has reached out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of the people. We are seeing these old prophecies that being fulfilled in our day, and we will see the coming of Jesus' kingdom, unless we'll see it in our lifetime, unless we go out and have a car wreck and die. I'm just convinced. You know what I'm saying? If we live out a normal lifetime, we're going to see this come about. God is very exact, and this is one of the things that was so fascinating to me about the blood moon tetrad prophecies, is to find out how exact he is that, okay, there's some stuff going on here, and he fulfilled the spring feast exactly, not just to the day, to the hour. He fulfilled the spring feast exactly to the hour. Exactly when they're slaughtering the Passover lamb in the temple is exactly when he was being beaten and crucified and stuff. So the hour that he died, all of these things line up exactly. The Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Pentecost. All of the birth of the church was on the feast of Pentecost. That's a Jewish feast. We correlate it with just a church Christian thing, but there's a reason they were all gathered in the upper room. It was because it was a Jewish feast day. They were all there for a reason, and that was the birth of the church, the Feast of Pentecost, when the Spirit came and filled the church.
Oh, it just irritates me so much how Christians just they don't even know what they're reading.
It does me too.
I'm so irritated. My mind's like blown, but it's still. Dang it!
I love these Old Testament prophets. I love these Old Testament prophecies.
They're like self-adjoined. I'm like,
I have notes.
I don't have all your notes.
I can give you these. I just go home and toss the notes usually at the end of Sunday that I have, and plus we're recording it tonight, so at least if nothing else, you can go back and look at hopefully we'll get this uploaded.
Yeah, for real. I'm glad that you're actually recording it, because that's just a lot to remember.
Yes.
But still.
How cool. So we are seeing it happen. Okay, verse 12. Okay, so now that I've convinced you.
You were not done yet.
Okay. Now that I've convinced you that we're watching it happen. Okay. So this should be all exciting from here on out. Verse 12. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish. Now, Ephraim, by the way, that's just an idiom for Israel, the northern kingdom. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish, and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile toward Ephraim, because remember there had been rivalry and civil war between the two nations, the factions of nations. They will swoop down on the slopes of Philistia to the west. Together they will plunder the people to the east. They will subdue Edom and Moab, and the Ammonites will be subject to them. The Lord will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian sea. With a scorching wind, he will sweep his hand over the Euphrates River. He will break it up into 7 streams so that anyone can cross over in sandals. That hasn't happened yet. We're going to watch it happen. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people that is left from Assyria, as there was for Israel when they came up from Egypt. Now, how cool is that? We're going to see, I have more and more reason to believe that we will see God, and this will likely be after we are raptured, okay? But he has a plan.
I'm like, man, I'm going to see on the news. A mighty wind came and swept up the Gulf of the Egyptian Sea. I'll be like, because I watch the news all the time.
See, now, look, let me tell you, I was saying things 15 years ago that I was ridiculed for, which reminds me of today, by the way. I say things now today that I am ridiculed for. 10 years from now, I guarantee you, there will be 1 or 2 people left around that'll be like, yeah, I remember Janice always saying that. I'm like, I know. Anyway, she said that we were going to say that. Yeah. I forget what I was going to say. Okay. No, it's all good. Where am I? 16. There will be a highway. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is that we will see, the church has a program. Israel has a program. God is not done with Israel. The Jews are his people, even though a lot of them still don't recognize him. That's what the hour of Jacob's trouble, the week of Jacob's trouble, is for. The time period of the tribulation is basically to push them up against the wall. But he intends to save them through it. He intends to protect them through it. But he's going to have their heels to the fire, so to speak, and say, you're going to acknowledge me as God, or, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Yes. So they're going to do it the hard way. Okay. But then they will look on the one they have pierced and mourn for him as one mourns for an only son. So it will happen, but that's what that whole time period, that last week, Daniel's 70 weeks, that last week is the 7-year tribulation period, which I wonder sometimes if we're not already edging into. I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that for sure, but sometimes it crosses my mind. I wonder if we're already a little bit into it. I don't know. Because the first 3.5 years are relatively just things getting in place, more things happening over in the Middle East. But I don't know. We'll see. I've just in the back of my mind. I'm always kind of watching and observing and that kind of thing. There's going to be a rapture soon, trust me. Okay. But for Israel's sake, God will once again show himself like he did at the Exodus. Those mighty things that he did when he brought them out of Egypt, when he parted the Red Sea and the pillar of fire, all those, and fed them with manna from heaven. Those things are going to happen the minute they turn back to him. He's going to hide them away. And this is all prophesied. He's going to hide them away, and he's going to feed them and care for them as his own. And so it's all of the chess pieces are in play. Bradley, who plays chess, and he'll. As a matter of fact, that's a good L.A. Marzulli book for you. The chess, the great, what's it called? The chess, Ryan, chess match something. Yeah, chess, something about chess. I'm not a chess player. Okay, something about chess. Anyway,
something about endgame, perhaps.
Kinda. It goes through biblical history as a move, counter move, move, counter move. I saw someone put googly eyes on their chess pieces to make it fun.
You mean more fun than it already is?
I know someone else who's put googly eyes on things recently. Who shall remain nameless. Anyway, chapter 12, and there's only 5 people in this room besides me. And that day you will say, now this is basically a psalm. This is pretty straightforward. I was really leading up to the cool thing about the second gathering in. In that day you will say, I will praise you, Lord. Although you are angry with me, your anger has turned away and you've comforted me. You can almost hear this in Israel, in the nation of Israel. Not so much the church, but you can for Israel. If you were a Jew in Israel, you can almost feel this resonating in their future. I will praise you, Lord, although you are angry with me, your anger has turned away, and you've comforted me. Surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord himself is my strength and my defense, and he has become my salvation. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. In that day you will say, give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name. Make known among the nations what he has done, and proclaim that his name is exalted. Sing to the Lord, for he has done glorious things. Let this be known to all the world. Shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you. And that's just a beautiful psalm. Isaiah is the way he actually structured the language is very poetic. And a lot of these Old Testament prophets, in the Hebrew language, they use a lot of puns and play on words and stuff like that, which makes me wish that I knew Hebrew, which I don't. I rely on scholars to give these little tidbits of information. If I had any more hours in my day, I would actually, love to learn Hebrew, but I understand it's a lifelong challenge. Okay, so that is the end of that, and we got through it pretty quickly. And we're going to pray for a minute. Now, how do I do this?
just the buttons at the very bottom right that's got the little blinking red thing. Just hit it.